Welcome to the Daily Devo. My name is Diana. Today we are talking about Joseph. Has life ever turned out differently than you hoped it would? Have you ever experienced pain or disappointment because of the actions of others? The answer is likely yes, because like Jesus said, in this world we will have trouble. Well, we are going to look at the story of a man named Joseph in the book of Genesis. His is a story that spans the decades, and you can find his story all throughout Genesis 37 through 50. It's a long story in Genesis. But we're going to meet him as a boy of about 17 years old. He's the youngest of all of his brothers, and he's his father's favorite. And as a boy, Joseph would have these dreams about the future, and then he would share them with his brothers. Well, his brothers hated Joseph. They were jealous of him and the things that he was saying. And one day, out in the field, the older brothers decide to kill Joseph. Yet one of the brothers, Reuben, he was the oldest. He said, let's not kill him. Let's just put him in this cistern, just this hole in the ground, and we'll just leave him there. You see, Reuben was planning to come back later that night and bring him home after everything had cooled off. However, at that time, this caravan was traveling by, and the brothers decided to sell Joseph as a slave to this caravan. And that was that. Joseph's life as he knew it, it was no more. No longer was he at home. No longer was he free. No longer was he in the land of his people. His life was completely different. Well, as the story unfolds, Joseph is sold as a slave to Egypt from the caravan. And even so, Joseph, we find in Scripture that the Lord was with him even in Egypt. And even in the midst of that, Joseph prospered. Genesis 39:2 tells us that. Joseph, he actually, in Egypt, in captivity, he gains the respect and the favor of his master. He started gaining leadership and responsibilities in this new place. Yet tragedy follows him again. The wife of this new master kept pursuing Joseph, and Joseph would flee and he'd refuse to give in to her advances until one time, after his master's wife failed in her attempts to seduce Joseph, she accused him of harm. So Joseph, he was sent into prison, and all that favor, all that responsibility was gone in an instant, and he again found his life changed with a lack of freedom and in a place he never chose to be. And in the midst of this, it was all because of other people's actions. Well, you see, time passed and Joseph is in prison until one day he's called to interpret the dream of the Pharaoh. And Joseph tells the Pharaoh, hey, I cannot interpret the dream, but God will give you the answer you desire. At that time, what does that tell us? It tells us that Joseph kept his faith in God, that he interprets Pharaoh's dream not because he thinks he's able to, but because he still has his relationship with God. And after he interprets the dream correctly, Joseph is brought out of prison and he's promoted in Pharaoh's household. And Joseph is given great leadership, great resources over the nation's resources and needs and strategic plans. The story continues. I told you it was a long one in Genesis. And years later, Joseph's brothers, the very ones who wanted to kill him and threw him in a cistern, they come back to town. And the very same brothers who unjustly plotted to kill him and sell him into slavery stand before their brother, but they don't know it. Read that in chapters 42 to 50. But listen to what Joseph eventually says in Genesis chapter 50, verses 19 and 20. Here's what he says to his brothers. Joseph said to them, "Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the savings of many lives." So today, we can learn from Joseph's story a few different truths. First, God's plan cannot be stopped. Let me say that again. God's plan for you cannot be stopped, no matter what happens nor how you're treated. Second, God is always at work, and we can always join him no matter where we find ourselves. Don't miss that. Joseph chose to seek God and follow God when he was in the cistern, when he was in the caravan, when he was a slave in Egypt's household, when he was a slave in prison unjustly put there. And again, he sought God and followed God when he was promoted to the most high position in the land. You see, no matter what happens, might you and I still follow God. No matter what happens, might we too seek God and follow God's ways no matter where we find ourselves. And finally, Joseph, He knew that even if people meant to harm him, that God can intend it for good. So take heart in God's power and his goodness, his ever-present help in times of trouble today. And let's reflect on Joseph's story and look for God in our own story today. And maybe while you're at it, let's try to memorize Genesis 50 verses 19 through 20. We'll see you next time.